Hi everybody, welcome back to an installment of Mr. J's Lab. So I was rummaging around in a drawer the other day and I found these fans, and I thought to myself, these would be absolutely perfect for cooling the top of my laptop. So I think if I 3D print some kind of mount for these would do a suitable job at reducing the temperature on that. So that's what our project will be for today. Alright, so let's go ahead and start with the measurements. Width and height should be the same. We're concerned about the dimension, the size of the hole, and the distance of the two holes from each other. So, bad engineer. This is set into inches. Let's go ahead and set that to millimeters and zero that out. See, what we can do is measure the distance from the edges of the circles, which comes out to roughly 28.3. And then we can measure the size of the circle, like so, and that comes out to roughly 3.1. I think a safe number is 28.5. 39.8, these are 40 millimeter fans. Alright, now we're ready for Fusion 360, so let's hop on over there. We're going to get a top-down view and we're going to create a new sketch. We'll select our plane there. And now we're going to start by creating a small line connected to a larger line connected to a smaller line. This first small line will be 3.1 millimeters divided by 2. Let's zoom in a little bit. Alright, now our next line will be connected to the end of that, and that will be the 28.5 millimeters we measured earlier, and then we'll repeat that same small line here. That is 3.1 divided by 2, because I'm too lazy to do math. And now we can create our circles. So, 1. The center of each circle will go at the end of all of the lines, if that makes sense. So that is our circle. We can now do the same thing in the height direction, or so it would technically be the y direction. So let's measure the overall length here, because we don't need to do that since we already have a circle here. So we'll just pretend like we're creating another line. We'll measure from one center point to another, that's 31.6, and then we'll do that in the y direction, so 31.6. And then we'll go ahead and do that again for the fourth and final circle. 31.6. Awesome. So now let's create some circles there. 3.1 and 3.1. We'll hit finish sketch at this point, and we can go ahead and extrude our circles. So we'll hit E first. Now I can select all the faces that I want to extrude. And then let's just drag that up about 2 millimeters. Now that we have that, we're going to create a centering line, and we're going to create the outer box of the fan. So let's go ahead and center top down, create a sketch, and this sketch we're going to make a rectangle, so we can just type R and click anywhere. And then this is going to be 40 by 40, because that was the size of the fan itself. Now we'll extrude that. We'll just extrude that about 1 millimeter. We just really need the dimensions to play around with spacing and stuff like that. So now we're going to create another sketch, and we're going to create that centering line we talked about earlier. So we'll click the face, the bottom face here, click line, and we'll go from one corner to the other corner of the square. And then we'll do the same thing here, where we'll create a line at the center point here of one circle and go to the center of the other circle. So now that we have that, we hit finish sketch, and we can shift click the rectangle, type M to move it, and now we can move it by selecting the origin point, which will be this right here, which is the midpoint of this line that we drew. Move bodies, make sure that's selected, selection, there we go. origin point, target point, which will be the center there, and now we have that perfectly centered. We hit OK, and these two we can get rid of. We don't need these sketches anymore. See this one, delete, that's okay. That one, delete, that's also okay. So now, to finish this off, we're gonna shift click all of the faces of the circle. We're gonna press the E key and extrude down. Hit enter, and now we have the locations of the mounting holes of the fans. Perfect. Now we can create a frame around this that'll support 4 of these evenly spaced out next to each other. Okay, to create 4 more of these and align them perfectly with each other, we're going to use a rectangular pattern. So first, just to get it off the bat, I have kind of a big laptop. It's 15.6 inches, so it'll support a lot of space. Now these fans are 40 millimeters each, and if we have 4 of them, that's going to be at least 160 millimeters if we place them exactly side by side. But I want to space them out a little bit so I can distribute the cooling more evenly on my laptop. So we're going to go ahead and create a line of 200 millimeters, and that should give us about 10 millimeters of space in between each of the fans. So we'll start by creating a sketch here. We will select this face, the bottom face, and then we'll create a line starting at the corner of there. And okay, let's get a top-down view. Make that easy, 0 degrees, and that's going to be 200 millimeters for my use. Now that we have that line, we can go ahead and hit finish sketch. Then we'll go ahead and hit create, and we're going to create a pattern, rectangular pattern. We'll select that as the body, the object. The direction here will be this line, and then now we can go ahead and just space this out. So I'll have this go all the way to the edge right here, and then we're going to up the quantity to 4, and that'll give us the desired effect. Okay, so now we have 4 perfectly spaced fans. We just have to draw a frame in which we can screw in these fans. So let's go ahead and do that next. Okay, so now that we have our 4 fans how we want them, so we're going to go ahead and start a sketch and create a rectangle. This rectangle, we're going to start from the top left corner and go down a little bit to the right. I eyeballed it and I made it about 8 millimeters in terms of thickness, so I had roughly 3 millimeters of space in between each circle's edge, and that should be enough space so that I don't have any problems, any breakage or anything like that. Now that this is set up, we're going to create some circles, and these circles are going to be at the center points of each of the mounting holes. Now the only catch here is we're going to make them 3 millimeters in size, because the screws that I'm working with, they mount at 3 millimeters. I played around with a few different sizes before. It didn't really work out. I had to drill and some were too big, so 3 millimeters is the magic number for the screws that I have. Let's go ahead and create a couple more of them. Sometimes in Fusion you have a little bit of a hard time getting a center point. If you hover around, you won't always find your center point, and you can click, like even though it shows you place center point, it won't place it in the right point. So you can actually just change the aspect a little bit, because there's 2 circles on top of each other, and I think Fusion has a hard time interpreting which one you want to click on. So if you change the angle, you can often get to the one that you're looking to manipulate. So 3 millimeters there, and do this a couple more times. I'm sure there's more efficient ways to do this, but as long as I get it done, I'm happy. If anybody finds a smarter way, please leave it in the comments. Almost there. 2 more. 3. Alright. So now that we have that, we're going to turn off the bodies over here so we just get our sketch. And that's exactly what we want. So now we'll go ahead and extrude that. Shift click that. Now we'll extrude it and we have to consider the length of the screws, and I don't want the screws to protrude past this. I want this surface to be flush so I can lay it on my laptop and not be concerned with any scratching. So instead of making it 3mm, we're just going to go a little bit extra and make it 3.5mm or 3.25 if you want to save some plastic and time printing. And then here, instead of joining, we're going to create a new body from that. And we hit OK, and awesome. Now we have the first mounting portion here. Now, take into consideration, if you want, you could take another one of these, like we would copy this. Let's go ahead and do that. Move, because we have to do that anyways. So we will select bodies, selection, origin point. We want to select, this is our origin point and our target point there. And if you want, you can create connection point between here and here, but at the same time, us screwing all the fans in at those anchor points, all that mounts, kind of pointless. And considering the fact that it's just going to sit on a laptop, not do anything, I'm not really too worried about it. So I am not going to do that, and I'm going to leave it right there. And that looks pretty nice. Now, the next thing we have to account for are the electronics. I'm not really going to do anything fancy in terms of electronics. I'm just going to wire all the fans together to a central point and then maybe connect them to an on-off switch, and then from there a USB cable that I can plug into. Alright, so I mentioned some electronics earlier. I just want a basic on-off switch so I don't have to unplug the fans every time, and it's roughly the same width as the fan itself, so I feel like I might be able to work this in and still keep that nice flush profile going on. So yeah, back to Fusion 360. Alright, so we're going to build a little electronics box where we can route all the wires for the fan, mount the switch, and put a little USB port on there so that we can plug common cables into it. So since I worked on this already and I lost a little bit of some footage, so we're going to step through what I had worked through, and yeah, we'll do it that way. So we'll start by extruding this a little bit. It's going to be about 20 or so millimeters, and it's just to accommodate the depth of the switch that we're using. So there's the extrude, and then we'll create a wall and create another wall, create another wall, and then we're going to create a cutout for the switch itself. So there's the cutout for the switch, and then we have to make a cap for this because we don't want those wires to be exposed. We want to be able to grab something. So now we have to make an opening for the USB port. Okay, so I have these little USB breakout boards, and these are awesome. I keep these on hand because they break out the power and the ground from any USB cable and gives you access to an instant 5-volt power supply. These are awesome to have. What we're going to do is we'll take this, we will wire it to this switch over here, and then we will wire that to all of the fans, and we'll have a nice on-off on the side so we can press the unit with one hand. We'll push the back side of the fans, apply pressure like so, and yeah, so let's get back to Fusion. And that's where the opening will be for the USB port. You can put it on either side, whichever's convenient for you. Just note that if you do put it on the other side, you would have to move this switch location down. You know, basically just accommodate your changes. So yeah, now that we have that, we're going to add a access port on the top because we have to screw mount the USB port into place. So we have to get access in there with a screwdriver one way or another. So we can just put a box here and that'll suffice. I think I might move this or widen this up a little bit. That's good. Do the same thing in the other direction. Awesome. Now we can hit Control S, save, although I should have been doing that this whole time. And now we have a product that will hopefully work as expected. So let's export this. I'm going to unclick all the unnecessary bodies. So that way we know what we're working with. Body 10 and 9 are what we care about. And then we'll right click that, and then we'll just hit save as STL. Then hit OK. I have some previous parts that I did and wanted to make changes to, so we'll just save it as those instead. And this will be saved as part 2. I click save as STL, okay, and part 2. That's quite fine. Control save and minimize this. And now we're going to go to Cura. We'll just open the files and arrange them so that we have an optimal print. Now for me, I'm going to go ahead and rotate these. Alright, awesome. One last thing is, I don't want to print this like so. I want this face here to be aligned to the bottom. So we'll go ahead and click line face to plate. Hold Control Alt, and we'll arrange all models. And we'll take this one and move it just a little bit. Alright, let's go. So we'll check our settings. Printing temperature, build plate temp looks good. We are generating support. It's placing it everywhere, which this we kind of have to be conscious of because we don't need support in the holes here, here, and all the way through here. So we can go ahead and fix that by selecting the model, clicking this icon right here. So let me go ahead and rearrange the view. And we're just going to click where the holes are at, and we're telling Cura where not to place supports. Awesome. So that looks great. Let's go ahead and slice it. But remember to preview your slice before you save it, because you can catch any weird stuff that will happen. As we can see, there are no supports in these holes, and there are supports in the rectangular cutouts, which we will need support for. Awesome. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and take this to the 3D printer. We close this, save to file. Overwrite this that I had here and save. Yes. Awesome. So one thing I realized after I exported all that stuff into Cura was that these edges are sharp. So for something more than just an aesthetic purpose, we're going to apply some fillets to this. So I'll go ahead and do that. Ta-da! So yeah, those fillets will save your hands. Let me get a few here. 0.5 looks better there. Awesome. Now I just have to re-export this and we'll get this onto the printer. You know, I could do it this way, but I kind of like going and setting the temp manually because it allows both units, the hotbed and the nozzle, to get up to temp at the same time, which reduces the amount of time we have to wait to get to the print. So we'll go ahead and hit print and laptop cooler. Print, great. Now we just wait for that and we'll have a nice time lapse.
There's something in the air.
Alright, so it's time for my favorite part, assembly. We're going to go ahead and pop these little notches out here and here. We're going to put our switch in there, attach a wire to the switch. We'll end up soldering all that in place. And yeah, so let's start doing that. We're going to take our red, strip it from the black, and attach it to one end of the switch, and then the other end to the USB part here. So voltage bus to there. Sorry if the lights flicker a little bit. It tends to happen when my soldering station is on.
These are hands down my favorite type of wire strippers. Yeah, I discovered these one day, probably like 9 months ago, and I saw them online, and I ordered them out of curiosity. I got them for like $11 in China, because I couldn't get them anywhere locally, you know, and they were awesome. You know, like, I don't have to touch that tension screw or anything like that. It adjusts, self-adjusting. It works really well. I absolutely love it. It's the best invention since the wire strippers themselves. So what I'm doing right now is attaching the wires that will get power from the USB port, and I'm soldering those onto the switch. The other stuff I will solder as well, but I'm going to do the fans last, because the switch I have to get in place first, and because of the access and you know, trying to work inside a narrow space like that, I don't want to risk burning the plastic shell or anything. I've done that before. Almost up to 10, and we are up to 10. Soldering skills are a little shoddy right now because I'm trying to work through a camera. I'm trying to multitask, but this should be sufficient. Pop this out, look at our switch. Okay, so they look a little dirty because of the solder that I use. It's a low-grade solder. So you'll see some of the fluxy kind of stuff go to the top, but so far we'll see some, if you see some shiny specks amongst the stuff that goes to the top, then it's a good solder joint for this material. Usually you want to see like a full shiny coat on there, but you'll get some kind of like slag-like substance on the top. So yeah, this should be sufficient. That seems good. Not only is this tool incredibly fast and easy to use, it is actually better for the connections that you're working with, because you don't place stress on connections. Let's say theoretically you had to cut and strip a wire somewhere down here. You know, when you grab with your wire strippers and you grab with your thumb and you twist and you pull like that, your thumb doesn't have enough strength to hold the wire back, so at times you're pulling on this connection here. Since these grab from one end and the other end, they remove the chance of that kind of stress happening. Now, sure, you could have a second set of pliers handy that you can hold the wire with, but now you've got pliers to hold and you have a wire stripper to work with, and you know, the constant moving back and forth, it's annoying to work with. As you guys can see, I am very fond of my wire strippers. I like my green color. I feel like it matches my mat. Alright, so now that those are all stripped, let's wire them together. Sorry about the camera stability. They're doing some construction in my house, and you can hear it and kind of feel it too. My camera mount is attached to the wall, and I feel like the vibration of their hammers and tools is being passed through them. So yeah, I'm sorry if it's a little hard to see what's going on at times. Cool, now everything's soldered. We can go ahead and assemble everything. I almost forgot. We need to clean these joints up. I like my hot air gun, but it always makes my lights flicker. is our switch there. Nice and smooth. There are no sharp edges. There's our switch, and there is our USB port. So let's test it out. Let's see if the thing even works. Awesome! Switch works as expected. Ooh, that's a lot of airflow. Alright, awesome. Now we have to test the results of it working. Does it work well on my laptop? Will it help keep it cooler? $105, $106, $109. Are we gonna hit 110? Let's see. Towards the side, we get 104, 102. Right here's 102. We hit it 110. So this center spot right here, we get a lot of heat going on. So ideally, these fans, if we put them in that spot, that should be the best spot. Our keyboard does get a little bit warm. It gets around 100, 104. Right now it's 99 because I had the fans on them. But in terms of hottest spots, I think this is going to be the hottest. We've got 112 right here. Now if we put our fans on them, do a quick sweep through. So our temperature drops. We've got 98. I'm gonna go in between the fans right here. 88, 89. Back to the side, we're at 103. Sweeping, still 103.4. And yeah, so that hot spot is primarily underneath this fan. We give it a few minutes, maybe even just 30 seconds. We can see the temperature is actually going down. So it was 103.4 just a few moments ago. Now it's 102.3 around the sides of the fan. So the heat is starting to be distributed amongst the entirety of here, and I feel like we're going to see that hot spot that was underneath this fan here. It's going to disappear, and the area around here is going to climb a little bit because that heat is going to creep. So now we're seeing 100 degrees, 101 degrees around the fan, 102.5. See, going further from the fan, 102.7. So we are seeing like a degree here. If we go underneath the fan, 103. So that brought that down by about 7 or 8 degrees. We see it's climbing already. As soon as we take that fan off, it's getting hot. So we can tell that these fans are doing a good job of bringing the temperature down. The next thing that we got to do to keep this temp down, to keep this temp down, is probably get rid of this dust cover, because this dust cover is holding a whole lot of heat in. If we check right here at the center, the dust cover is already at 104 degrees, and that's because no heat can escape out this way. It's climbing 105, 106. If we go towards the edges where we can lift it up a little bit like that, you can see that it's 98 degrees, 94, somewhere around there. That's because the heat can escape from those edges, but it can't escape from here. So these things are killing the performance of my laptop. It would do me a whole lot to remove this and keep this here so that we get rid of that hot spot up there and get rid of the hot spot here. Alright, so my thoughts on it. I like the fan. I like the setup. The design is real nice. One thing I'd like to incorporate is perhaps maybe a cover for that cutout that we use for the screwdriver. And then on top of that, I will have to mention that some of the holes didn't come out the correct dimension size, and I think that was because we didn't use supports when printing this. I noticed that the second bar where all these screws screw into was absolutely fine, and that's because it printed down like that. We printed this like this. The dimensions without supports changed ever so slightly. So the screws are kind of loose, and I don't know if you noticed, but there's actually a screw missing right there. Other than that, I think everything's fine, and I really like how it came out. It's nice, there's no LEDs, it's relatively quiet. I can't hear when I put my headphones on. You know, fans will generally
be noisy. It plugs straight into USB and it works great. I think it does an awesome job. And looking at the FPS, I can't discern over a period of 45 minutes whether there was like FPS drops or anything like that. But playability, the game I was playing felt better. It felt smoother. There were minimal screen tears and glitches, lags, things like that. So I do feel like it's a nice project, and I absolutely love the Switch. The Switch came out perfect. The spot for it, measurements, everything, that came out perfect on the first try, so I was happy like that. So that's my thoughts on this, and those were my ideas on improvements that could be made for it. I'll most likely post the files for this project, so that way you guys can download it if you want to modify it, maybe even just buy some similar fans and put the same things in there for your laptop, because I know these big coolers, the ones that go underneath, they're not all that convenient, and in my case I had a hot spot that I had to deal with specifically, and these fans did a great job of distributing the heat more evenly so that the chip that's underneath that hot spot isn't just taking a lot of heat, you know. And then this project altogether helped me to identify that the keyboard cover was a big retainer for the heat. I would definitely get rid of that keyboard cover. You'll see that gone in the next few videos. And yeah, that's my thoughts on this project altogether. Thanks for watching an episode of Mr. Jackson's Lab. If you like the content you saw, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. I will be posting more videos in the future. You can leave your ideas for video content in the comments. I would love to hear that. And I most likely will be selling these wire strippers in my store, so if you'd like to help support the channel, feel free to check out the links in the description. Thank you and have a wonderful day.